and welcome to the Do the Best Work of Your Life video series. I'm Carissa, editor of HR Magazine, and this series is brought to you in partnership with the Access Group, which offers technology to help people do their business better and smarter. Throughout this 10-part series, we're exploring how artificial intelligence, AI, and other technology can help HR leaders do the best work of their lives. This is episode 4 of a 10-part series, so don't forget to go back and rewatch all of the episodes of the series. Let's get into it. So we're talking today about creating the best first impression. Tim, what are the main pain points for HR leaders when they're thinking about onboarding?
It's interesting, isn't it? We put so much work into recruitment, and then you're perfect candidate, you've put all that work, you've waited through the notice periods, you've completed all your due diligence, and they arrive. But do we commit the time that is needed to set them up for success? You know, how are we looking for the commitment, not just of their manager, but of their colleagues to really explain, you know, who's who in the zoo, how we get things done around here, where the resources are, how our business systems work, and to really lean into it. You know, in business, we always focus on that first 100 days. But how about that first day? You know, you want someone to really go home energized, saying, oh, it's fantastic, love the office, love the people, got a really great first feeling about the culture, and also have a sense of how I can make a difference already. Wouldn't that be a fantastic first experience? And you take that energy away, and then you build on that day by day in terms of really getting them into, right, this is what performance looks like here. This is how we're going to measure that performance. And to take all the potential that you've seen, which is why they've got the job in the first place, and to really build and deliver upon it.
That's the task, but how achievable is it? How easy is it to get there? What's the main things that can go wrong?
Well, you've got to remove some of the blockers that can be there. And I'd say the first one is time, because creating that opportunity where the business as usual steps away and you can really focus on the individual. I mean, we all know the ideal is, you know, I'd love to take you for lunch on day one. How many people actually do that? You know, actually have some time and say, right, this is what's going on at the moment since we last spoke, because, you know, weeks have often gone past between the last face-to-face conversation and this moment. This is what's happened since we've last spoken. This is how the business is performing at the moment. There's been a couple of changes in the team. You know, let me explain what's happening between this office and that office. This is how we're performing in terms of our customers, our clients. This is some of the changes that we're going through in terms of our products and services. Really start to bring people into those conversations. And I think so often we're giving so much information we forget to ask. You know. How are you doing? It's a case of, did that make sense? You know, checking in. I know you've done this kind of, you've dealt with that kind of client before. What should I be thinking about? And just immediately bring them into the conversation.
That makes so much sense. Is that resonating with you, Zoe, and your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually think that pre-day one piece is really important as well. I think to kind of really get someone excited and actually have the knowledge of a bit about their team, the culture. I mean, they will have done their research as part of the recruitment process. But I remember the days where you used to kind of wait, if you had a 3-month notice period, you kind of had the recruitment piece and then you just waited and rocked up on day one and were given your contract. And yeah, that shouldn't be the case for anyone anymore. I think that engagement piece before you actually start on day one is really important. There's lots of people that just ghost people. They just don't turn up on day one, and that's the risk, I think, of not engaging and not doing a pre-day one onboarding piece as well. I think you can lose people, or they get sort of sidetracked somewhere else, and yeah, you can lose engagement before they've even walked in the door.
But as Tim said, no one wants to create a bad impression.
No.
Right? I mean, but you just get sidetracked with life gets in the way. And it's about being scalable, and I think this is where, you know, tech can really, really help, because, you know, AI can take vast amounts of information, all the onboarding information, but serve it to the person when they feel they need it, right? Because you know what you need at a moment in time, and there's also what does the company need you to know, and so by marrying those two things together, you're almost creating a personalised onboarding experience for every single person. And before AI, you don't even have the time to onboard people properly, right? Let alone personalise everything for every single person who walks through the door. And that's what I think what AI gives is at scale, but still personalised.
It's usually in my experience, the clients that I work with, it's the HR teams that are there trying to design the onboarding, and I don't think there's enough engagement always with the business. When you start having tech and AI involved, when you've got that personalisation piece where you can actually kind of drill down to the functions and make it quite specific, and actually to the individual and their background and their experience, it becomes really a completely different thing, totally a lot more engaging and a lot more powerful, I think.
And the web of work is very different.
It is.
We're expecting people to work across not just colleagues who are employees, but colleagues who might be, I always think of it very, very simply. For every role that we have a need for, how are we going to fulfill it? Are we building someone, so taking someone who's already in the team and then progressing them on? Are we borrowing someone, finding someone who in a different organisation who can support us, perhaps fractionally, perhaps from a different country? That whole web of different means of employment. Someone within the gig economy, for example. Are we botting it? Are we actually saying that role doesn't need to be done by a person anymore? We can find a different solution for that. Or are we buying it? And it's only, and buy should always be the fourth of the four solutions for that role. And that's when you're going outside, because you've got to keep that your constant focus on your operating costs. And it's so difficult to drive additional revenue. You've got to keep that very, very weather eye on, okay, how else can we build out this team? And that's how you stay competitive.
And those are the considerations that HR leaders should be thinking about with regards to onboarding, I'm guessing.
Every time.
Yeah, it's that piece. Anything to add, Oli?
Yeah, I think again, I always represent the AI and the bots, right? But it can be really, really useful for helping with culture and helping with. We don't talk enough about the first impressions and being onboarded. It's not just about the compliance list, what's the policies, all of that stuff, because that's. Although, by the way, AI is brilliant at doing that. It's brilliant, but AI is brilliant at doing that because you never read the manual, as we keep saying. You never read it. You can ask the question, what is the expense policy here? What is the policy for this? That reinforces that onboarding experience when you actually need it, because that's a lot of the time. Onboarding is one thing. You tend to find you need it a lot later. But where I think it really humanizes that process is if you know what people's skills and interests are across quite a broad organization. I'm not saying it's a matchmaker or a dating app, but it's brilliant. AI is brilliant at saying, well, you like cycling, and I know someone else who likes cycling, and it's almost like you can bring people together as humans by using AI to sort of pull those together, whether it's mentorship, whether it's interests, whether it's your role, and just disseminating all that information, but really humanizing it for the people while they're being onboarding, I think can make a real big difference to the experience.
What's the role of people within this? What's the role of people leaders and managers in this, Zoe? If you can speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't want to lose the human in this.
No, we absolutely don't. And I think it is about how you leverage technology and where are the important bits to give the human touch. And that doesn't necessarily have to stem from the HR team, but it is setting the expectations and the culture. It is about leadership development as well. How do you want your people leaders to be engaging with your new starters or your pre-boarders, and just making sure that's really clear and getting feedback and measuring it and looking at metrics like who doesn't turn up on day one, who drops out when they're in their probation, who doesn't last the year. Getting feedback on onboarding processes, something fairly new but quite common now in clients that I work with. They will survey people around how was the recruitment process and how was the onboarding, how was your first week, and just getting a little bit of feedback. And I think technology is really good at being able to ask little bite-sized questions rather than kind of reams of questions or surveys or having to pick up the phone. But
taking the pulse of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Sector. But actually, if you could do a lot with automation and technology, it allows the HR person to pick up the phone and have a human conversation. It's about weighing up where that human touch will add the most value and the most impact, I think. So I think you can carve out which activities are automated and delivered through systems and technology, and which ones actually are really powerful when you get the human back involved. And it's really nice. The HR director rang me and sort of welcomed me, and that's can go a long way.
We're only new once.
Exactly.
And you've got to grab that opportunity. Yeah. And I think it's particularly the ability to bring together a cohort of people that have joined over a matter of weeks and to say, right, actually the CEO would like to have some time with you all, and she'd like to update you on what's happening across the business at the moment, any questions that you've got, really lean into that and just say how delighted that she is that you're all here. Build the energy, because I always think about every time someone goes home, the energy that you can or cannot take home to your family, to your friends, to your flatmates, to whoever's there. When you're starting a job, everyone around you's going, how's it going? How's it going? How's it going? What do you think? What they like? What's your boss like? What are they asking you to do? Is the tech any good? How are you being set up for success? You were so excited about this when you got it. Is it delivering on that excitement? Is it taking you to where you aspire to go? And understand that we are flesh and blood. You've got to lean into that human energy and give them a story to go home with. And there's lots of different ways we can do that, but just create some excitement, create some magic for them to take away.
And that's what tech enables you to do. Like, it can do some of the heavy lifting. I still know teams that do a lot of the tasks that it's not even AI, it's nothing, they're not even automating kind of reminders and tasks and things. It's still very manual. And I just think it's such a shame because they've got talented people in these teams that could really be adding that value if they were freed up.
It's saving that time, isn't it? Sorry, go on.
No, just say it could, because it's not natural to everybody. Yes. Yeah, we all have different styles as leaders, as humans. And so, where HR teams can really lean in is to work out what does good look like, and then how can we build that into our systems, so those little prompts, those nudges, all those examples of, there's so many ways that we can say it is more successful to bring people into your team if you X, if you Y. And you go, I'd never have thought of doing that. Yeah. It's like, oh, that's really interesting.
Being there for their first day, being one of them, I've had examples.
Can you imagine?
Absolutely.
But that's where tech can absolutely help, right? Because, as I said, you don't want to give someone a bad impression. Everyone is time poor. So if you've got rid of all of the admin-y sort of stuff, but even then you might still be too busy. And to get nudges, as you said, like, tech can be great. It's been 2 days since the last time you checked in with each other. Just a little tiny nudge, and that doesn't have, it could be a really simple, just reminder to check in and check they're okay. And it makes a huge difference because, as I said, you're not doing it because you don't care, but because you're not doing it, it looks like you don't care. And that nudge can make all that difference on both sides, for both the new employee and for their team and for the leader.
So, Oli, what other tools can people leaders use to help them with their onboarding?
So I mean, I think you've got to bring in, and for once you can really scale this out, right? You can really scale this out because, as Zoe said, if you know what's working, you can look to refine it over time. So you should be bringing in the reporting to see how, what's working in your process and what isn't, right? When you do that, you can refine your own onboarding process to really enrichen it for your organization, for your culture. Whereas in the past, to do that would have been a huge project. You'd have had to go away, do lots of interviews, come back, rewrite information. You can get AI to analyze this and make incremental tweaks to you throughout that entire process. Whether it's the documentation, how well it's read, how many questions people are asking, what's the sentiment of their questions, you can take all that information back and use it to constantly improve the onboarding process so that each person who comes through the door gets a better experience than the last one. And you could do that at scale. You couldn't do that before because it took a person to do a lot of that stuff. Whereas this is now giving the humans time to really make those magic moments, the moments that matter.
Yeah, and I think it's exciting for HR teams. They can go way beyond compliance and really have impact and really demonstrate it through the analytics and the information and the feedback as well.
It's still not common, is it? We have, we're used to this language of exit interviews.
Yeah.
Why are you going? How about entrance interviews?
Yes.
It took 4 months between you receiving that first offer and arriving here for all these reasons. You had some holiday, you had some notice, there was this going on, we weren't ready for you, whatever. So here we are, a couple of weeks in. So, are we delivering on our promise to you? How's this working? Because it's super expensive if it goes wrong.
If I've not managed people before, if it's all quite new to me, having that kind of technology as well, the prompts and things, but actually being able to ask questions and get suggestions for the type of role, for the type of department, it's a great point. And because AI can leverage lots of information, including best practice, as well as your company documentation,
it can be an advisor to you. And I keep saying it's never the pilot, it's always the co-pilot. But you're right, you know, I mean, there are some difficult stuff that people deal with personally and professionally during onboarding that you might not feel comfortable engaging with them over, but to have that support yourself 24/7, it never gets grumpy, it never says, don't ask me that stupid question. It's always on, always answering, based on the information that you want to make sure is part of your culture and part of your documentation and your organisation.
So we've talked a lot about AI and the role that that can play in helping HR leaders deliver an amazing experience for people when they're coming into a business. But what other tools are there, and what role does analytics play, Oli?
Yeah, so I think analytics is the great starting point. I think oftentimes when you think about analytics, we think of you have to have data engineers, experts who are taking a long time to create and look at all these metrics, whereas it's moved on a lot since then, so much so that you don't have to have that in-house data officer to get amazing metrics about every single part of the onboarding process, what's happening, what isn't happening, all of the, the cost to onboard, all of this data is available to you. And modern analytic tools can bring that to you to the front so that you can start to see, what does that mean? What does that mean? How are we benchmarking ourselves against other companies who are similar to us? What's the micro trends that's happening here so that you can stay ahead of anything that you might not be aware of until the data makes a conclusion for you? Yeah. And I think that's a real big thing where by marrying analytics and AI, you're getting to a, hey, did you know that there is a problem over here that you wouldn't be able to see it on a day-to-day basis, but with a vast amount of data, you can start to see those patterns emerge, and that can really improve the onboarding process, but can also look at other ways in which you can improve as a company, not just on the onboarding part of it.
And you ask those questions, and you can really identify where the hot and cold spots are across an organisation. Multiple sites, multiple leaders. It is not going to be equal. It just doesn't work like that. And you ask those questions and get that real-time feedback. To what extent have you been set up with the right resources to do the job? To what extent do you understand how to utilise our business systems? To what extent have you got clarity as to what we're trying to achieve? What's our strategy? What are the blocks that are going to get us there in terms of achieving it? How are we measuring and celebrating success along the way? How are you experiencing communication or not? And you can really see these cold spots identified, and then you can go, oh, that's fascinating. That's really true in that location, or that's really true in that department. And sometimes it's about leadership style, and then you can work with that leader to really work upon that. Or something, it's just about the structure of a team, and you can go, hey, that's not working. How can we unpick that and put it back together again to really address those points?
It's very powerful as an HR business partner, I think, when you can go to your senior teams that you're supporting and actually bring these insights. And actually, you might not have spotted it if you were just looking at reports that are coming out on Excel, or you haven't configured the right bits on a dashboard. Actually, to go in and give these insights that, yes, you may have used technology to glean, but they're there. You can ask the right questions, but it still definitely needs that human touch to actually understand, is that really right? Is what this is suggesting?
It's a trend, and it's saying that you use a human to infer it, but it can also link back to the cost, right? Because the data is there, so you can actually quantify some of this stuff. And I think a lot of the time, when you go to senior leaders and talk about this cold spot here, this hot spot over here, they kind of glaze over a little bit, because
what's the impact?
What is the impact? Show me the exact cost to my business for these things happening, and what will be the cost improvement or the cost saving by doing it better. And you become a trusted advisor. We don't get rid of the person's ability to be an expert in their field. We just give them the ammunition to really get to the bottom of it.
Around the board table, you quite often have those conversations where someone says, I was speaking to so-and-so in this department, and she said this. And it's like, oh, that's really interesting, because we've just examined that whole team, all 245 of them, and as a team, they're saying this, this, and this. And so they are then comparing their anecdote, their sample of one, against your data. And that really changes it. Whereas if you go anecdote for anecdote, that is not a very happy conversation.
Is it valid? Is it valid? Yeah, absolutely.
But we this is how we get beyond I was speaking to so-and-so the other day and they're not happy. No. Go in there with data. Don't go and butt heads with them against, well, I actually know he's all right, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, let's talk about the whole team and the overall performance.
And I think measuring it then as well, to kind of work with senior teams to understand what are the metrics to look at actually when you do put solutions in place, to actually show that what you're doing is actually having the right impact. I think it's really important not
And
to...
look at the performance alignment behind it. Okay, so you ask any commercial leader who their top salespeople are, they'll go bang, 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 bang.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Why? They're not quite so quick to then explain why. And you go, well, let's look at the factors, because what I've asked them through all of our data, I can see that they're set up in the following ways, which is why they're at the top of their powers. So I can see the underpinning characteristics which are enabling that performance. Okay, now you're into a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, let's get that other chunk up to where they are by actually enabling them with learning or whatever tools or feedback or whatever they need to.
And what are the tools that we're talking about here? Because obviously we are wanting to create the best experience that we can for people when they're coming into the business. But we also need to be measuring that experience as they go along. So we need analytics tools. We need hopefully AI enablers. What else might we need?
Tasks and prompts and automation and the human touch. I think it's everything all in one, isn't it? But I think systems enable the power behind onboarding for me. I think they ensure you're compliant and you can report on that and you can check that and you can get all your stats and things, but it takes you way beyond that. And if you can personalise the experience and actually tailor it to how I like to learn, what I already know, so I'm not just being sheep dipped through what somebody does when they start in this role. I've got this background, I've done X amount of years in X, and it will tailor what you're having to do as part of your probation period or something. So that to me is...
I think care is demonstrated through attention,
Yes.
fundamentally. So if I know that you're walking towards a project, you're working towards a project, and I can see on the, on the shared project tool, okay, you're at point X in that progression, and you're a week away from a particular pinch point. Right, and I'm reminded of that because I've got a lot of things going on, but I've got that reminder just to lean in and go, I know we're a week away. How are you doing? Is there anything I can do to support?
Yeah.
Wow. It's a case of, my intent has just created a behaviour because of a little prompt. So that's a very clear professional piece. At the same time, I'd say, just being reminded that it's your anniversary today, or it's your birthday tomorrow, and all of those little points along the way also demonstrates that I'm thinking about you, I care about you, and it's not that I don't want to celebrate or note these things, but this is enabling me to deliver on that because I'm getting the prompts through, and I can then, we see it all the time.
So
I mean, how often do we pop on social media and it says it's so-and-so's birthday today, and you send them a little note.
But to do it well, though, to do it well from a technology perspective, I hate to say it this way, but if you've got a unified system, you've got much richer, different data sources. So, everything from your payroll to your recruitment tool to, every part of that process, if you've got a unified system, you can enrich that data. And again, I always say this, you've got to take the first step, right? You've got to be able to take a first step. There are tools now that are available, analytics, that can pull that rich information and make those. You don't need to be a data scientist to do it. You can take that first step. Even if you don't have a unified system, you could start to make quantified impact differences to your onboarding process. It's just massively eased and enhanced if you have a unified system that's applied with AI and analytics.
Okay, so how can technology help accelerate the onboarding process then? So if you're in a business and you have just hired an expensive salesperson, obviously you want to get them working as soon as possible, right? How can technology help us to do that? Tim, have you got any thoughts?
So one example I've seen is the use of VR. And if you're in hospitality, for example, and I've also seen this in the fire service, when you want someone to consider the situation that they're going to go into, and the organisation will use a VR headset so that they can play it through in advance. Now, that could be customer service, or it could be a life and death situation. And I think that gives an incredible play in terms of, right, let's really consider, not from a manual point of view of like reading stuff through, but actually seeing the situation played out in front.
Experience.
Absolutely, so it's visceral, Where does our best learning come from? When it's really visceral, we feel it, we go through that, and it's okay to make mistakes because it's a safe environment. So I think any time that we can create that kind of learning environment, it's incredibly deep learning. And then the ability to debrief afterwards. So it's that mix of how do I think about the environment, experience it, talk through the experience, and then tap into the broader experience that's there within the team or that's been systematized into the supporting business systems that can then help me draw out the learning from that and make me more effective. If I'm a salesperson, I want to earn my commission as fast as I possibly can, to the maximum that I can. So everything that you can do as a business to set me up as fast as possible to succeed to the potential that we have agreed that I have is fantastic. So, we have to create those opportunities for people.
So I would say from a tech perspective, you've got to think about how much do you actually need to cram inside a salesperson's head before they can be effective. And I think sometimes you try and swallow the whole manual and do all of those courses. Again, by breaking this up into the smallest pieces, letting them self-serve when it's convenient for them in between all the other tasks that they've got, you can, by personalising it, you can give them the absolute minimum that they need to be effective, but support them and reinforce it all the way. So again, I think you don't have to do a once and done when it comes to onboarding a salesperson. You can look to minimize that total amount that they would have to, the minimum they need to be effective, but reinforce it over time with those bite-sized learnings and those information. And also, if they know, they can simply type into Copilot, what's the answer to this question? Yeah. They're being supported every day, so the amount they have to store up front is less. So I think
is that minimum input going to give that business the maximum productivity?
In the fastest time frame, yeah, because I think you can't expect someone to learn everything all in their first week, right? So you need to reinforce it over time and reduce the amount that they have to store in their head. They can just simply ask Copilot to support them with the question that they've got in hand when it's relevant to them, which reinforces what they need to know.
Fantastic. Zoe, anything to add?
No, I was just thinking about when I've onboarded and been met with all these acronyms and things that you don't know. So yeah, the skills is really important, but actually how the business works and being able to ask questions that you might feel a bit stupid asking your new line manager is really helpful in getting people settled and understanding how you do things around here. What is the language? What are the systems? All of that kind of stuff is really important as well.
Because you want to put your best foot forward, but at the same time, you want to appear super competent.
Yeah, absolutely. I know what I'm doing. I deserve this role.
You believe in me, and it's like, I've actually forgotten what that means.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
And much easier, to your point, to let me ask something that's definitely not going to judge me.
Yeah, it's not going to judge me.
No judgment here. In fact, my judgment is all positive of all of you panelists. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. It's been a great conversation.